Hey guys! So today I decided to tackle the final bit of regular potatoes. You can see the skins on the floor that I had left from my food pantry boxes. And I want to say it took me maybe like 30 to 45 minutes to peel all of these. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm going to do with all of them. These potatoes here all had like something wrong with them. This was like super green. My camera never actually shows the true color of things like the way they show in real life. So even though on camera they kind of look okay, I promise you I wouldn't just like not eat a potato if I couldn't eat it because I love potato. Like this one right here looks fine, right? And it looks fine here. Then you flip it over and it's like, when does it end? I don't know, I didn't feel like chasing it. So anyway, as I said, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with these potatoes, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to be that exciting. Like, I'm not going to make twice-baked potatoes with all kinds of seasonings, making them super crispy with exotic oils and all these, like, deep, briny flavors. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to boil most of them, and then I'm going to be making several portions of mashed potatoes, some potato salad, and then some of them I'm just going to chop up and put in the oven because I do want some variety. And I'm going to package it all up. Some of it's going to go in the freezer, some of it's going to go in the refrigerator. I'm definitely not expecting the potatoes that I put in the oven to stay crispy after I put them in the refrigerator, but it would be kind of nice to have like a potato that's not completely mushy, and it would probably just be way easier for me to like throw them in the air fryer or back in the oven or something just to crisp them back up. So I'm going to go ahead and get my tripod set up and clean this up, and we will get on to the rest of the video. There were a couple reasons that I decided not to do too many things with these potatoes. Number one being that, as you can hear in the intro, I was quite ill at the time, and I just really didn't want to be doing a lot of cooking. I wanted food in the house so that way I didn't have to be cooking, so I definitely needed to use up all of those potatoes because several of them had eyes growing on them. They were getting kind of soft, but once I peeled them, they were just fine to use underneath. But another thing I wanted to mention in this is that when you are working on a low budget, you don't have to feel like you're missing out when you have really simple ingredients. Like, I don't think I've ever met a potato that I didn't like as long as it was cooked all the way through. So, today's recipes are going to be really stupid simple. Like, I didn't do anything fancy at all with these, but they were so good. Like, I made potato salad as one of the things here that we'll see coming up soon, and it was so good. It was my grandma's recipe, and I was just feeling a little homesick. Um, and even with the mashed potatoes that I'm gonna make in this video, like, nothing made it to the freezer the way I said I might freeze some of it. No, we blew through all of these potato dishes pretty quickly just because like they were so simple but so delicious, and it's just all in the way that you prepare your meals and how you feel about them, because there are definitely some people who don't like, really fancy spices or anything like that. Like my mom, she just likes salt and pepper on everything. um Maybe some garlic and onion powder, stuff like that. But um in my house, we definitely eat pretty simple, and we don't feel like we're missing out on anything at all. And for those of you who are just starting out in like living on your own or being responsible for your own food, I hope this sort of highlights that, yeah, you don't have to be a 5-star chef to make something that tastes good. And it's okay to have things that are pretty simple until you can build up your spice cabinet or build up your skill set to make things, a little more elevated later down the line. Alrighty, now that all of my potatoes are chopped up, the ones that I have in slightly larger cubes are going into this big soup pot so that way I can get all of them boiled up in one go, and then the ones that I have in smaller chunks I did have them in a bowl of water while I was cutting them up, but now that they are completely done, I've done all of the potatoes, I just put them in a strainer so that way they could start straining. And then I pulled out my pizza pan. If you are just starting out in a kitchen and you are, say, like a broke college kid like I once was, or if now you're just a broke adult the way I am now, I really recommend getting a pizza plate, or not a pizza plate, a pizza pan as your first, like, oven pan, or a very large sheet pan, because you can use this for many things, but especially in this house, we eat a lot of pizza, so it was important that we had a pan that could fit the roundness of a pizza. And the only other like sheet pans I had ever had were from the Dollar Tree, and obviously those were not big enough to accommodate a pizza size. So I got this one from Target for like $15. It's very beat up in the middle of when I was moving. I stepped on it at some point, so the metal has bulged on either side. I don't know how to get it to flatten back out. It is very well loved and used. In person, it is much darker than it looks. And honestly, at this point, I'm just glad that there's no, like, burnt on food. It's just, like, discolored from, like, carbonization over time. And I'm sure a couple of these are stains from when things did burn on it, but hey, it cleaned up, so in an effort to not have to do as much cleaning today, I'm going to use my best friend, parchment paper. Parchment paper is so great if you don't like to clean up the pan when you're done. I mean, obviously, sometimes there's still some, like, spillage, but depending on what you're making, parchment paper is your best friend because you don't have to worry about things, like, sticking to it the same way with, aluminum foil. I feel like when you use foil, there's still a pretty good chance that something's gonna stick to it. And I don't really have a problem with getting things to crisp up whenever I'm using parchment paper on a sheet pan, so I'm just gonna go ahead and line up this pan with a sheet of parchment paper, and then we'll get on to seasoning our diced potatoes. To start, I went ahead and laid out some paper towels onto my tray because my potatoes weren't quite as drained as much as I wanted them to, and I was super impatient and wanted to speed it up a little bit. But even after using these paper towels to take some of it off, I definitely should have let it sit in the colander and drain for longer because the potatoes were still like a little too wet for my liking by the time I added the oil and seasonings onto them. And they still cooked fine, but when you have that extra moisture on your food when you're putting it in the oven, it kind of makes it a little bit harder for it to get crispy. But I wasn't too pressed about it because I still, at this point, didn't know what I was going to use these potatoes for. I just knew that I wanted some cooked up that were separate from, mashed potato or just like the boiled texture. So just to keep it super simple, I only used some of this seasoning salt from the Dollar Tree. If you are interested in getting a seasoned salt, this is the only one I've ever tried, but I would maybe try a different brand because this doesn't really taste like there's any other seasonings in it really. It just tastes like salt. So if you're looking for like an all-in-one type seasoning, it might be worth it to go and try something else. But yeah, that's really all I did. I just sprinkled on some oil, sprinkled on some seasoning salts, and for me, I don't really measure how much I put on to stuff like this. Oddly enough, I have made like roasted vegetables so many times with all the different vegetables that when I'm putting seasoning on it, I can feel in my hands like how much seasoning is on something. That trick doesn't really work as well with salt because I feel like salt will dissolve kind of as you're rubbing it in. But if you have other things like garlic and onion powder on it, you'll start to feel the amount of like granules that you're putting on it, and like that's kind of how I grew up cooking, is like eyeballing that way. But if you want to use an actual like measuring spoon and over time you can figure out for yourself how much you like to season things, that's also another way you could go about learning. But my rambling aside, I finished getting all of these coated and then I stuck them into a 400-degree oven, and then after about 20 minutes I pulled them out and just used my spatula to give them a toss and then put them back into the oven until they reached my desired crispiness, and that was literally all I did to these potatoes. I'm not quite sure how long it took for these potatoes to finish boiling, but basically the rule of thumb when you're boiling potatoes is if you can get a fork and poke it through and it goes through nice and smoothly, your potatoes are done. I divvied them out into the two separate portions. Some of them are going to be mashed potatoes, and then some of them are going to be potato salad. And I'm going to start with the mashed potatoes because the potatoes for the potato salad are going to go into the refrigerator to cool while I'm doing this. And for today's mashed potatoes, I just added butter, mayonnaise, and garlic salt. And some people might find mayonnaise to be like a weird ingredient, but we don't usually add milk to our mashed potatoes. And some people like to add sour cream, so I feel like mayonnaise is just like a middle ground between sour cream and milk because it has like that creamy little bit of a like tang to it depending on the type of mayonnaise that you use. And then the garlic salt is just like, garlic powder and salt, so it's delicious. And I kind of severely underestimated how many potatoes I had actually cooked because they looked so few in the pot, but after like my initial round of adding things, I had to come back and add more. I just kept rotating between the garlic powder, the mayonnaise, and the butter, and tasting in between each thing that I added so that way I could see, like, oh, okay, this is how it changed the flavor. And actually, once the garlic flavor got up to where I wanted it to, I did end up adding just like a sprinkle of regular salt. And if I had any pepper, I would add pepper to it, but like for whatever reason, I ran out of pepper and I just haven't felt the need to go out and buy more. So in the end, this is what my mashed potatoes looked like after I was done fidgeting with them. And then eventually my potatoes were cool enough for the potato salad. And for this potato salad recipe, again, there's no like hard and fast amounts to it. It all just depends on how much potato you started with. But this is my grandmother's tried and true potato salad recipe. You start out with your potatoes, and depending on how soft your potatoes are when you start, you might have to mash them a little bit, but if you cooked them fairly soft, they'll kind of mash while you're mixing. And then as for all of like the dressing that goes into the potato salad, we add mayonnaise, dill relish, mustard, salt, and then a couple boiled eggs. You can also add pepper, but my grandma would always say that she didn't want to see like the little black flecks of pepper in the potato salad. So again, even though I didn't have any, I just left it out just for her sake. And I actually didn't have any dill relish today. I had to go out to buy the eggs because I didn't have any eggs in the house, and I was gonna pick up some relish just to make this, but my Walmart was completely sold out of relish, at least in the kind that I wanted, because we do not do this with sweet relish, we do not do it with kosher relish. So what I ended up doing was just buying that brand of pickles, and then I just blitzed them through my food processor. And you don't want a lot of the juice from the pickles, you just want like the chopped up pickle itself. So if you're using that brand of relish, I would definitely recommend taking a bunch of it out and squeezing it so that way you get all of the juice out. And interestingly enough to admit, as much pickle as this looks that I put in here, I wish I had ground up like one or two more pickles to add more pickle to it, because I freaking love pickles in my potato salad, but I just didn't feel like hauling out the blade again because I'd already washed it. And that's it. 3 super easy ways to deal with all of the potatoes in your house. At first, I really thought that these 3 were going to last a little bit longer in my refrigerator, but no, we pounced on these potatoes. None of them made it to the freezer. All of them got eaten within a reasonable amount of time in the refrigerator. Like the next morning, I literally had that small bowl of potato salad just for breakfast. And yeah, without anything left to show you guys, as always, if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!